Hello, everybody. It's so nice to see you. My name is Amy Schamberg, and I am a school psychologist and a mental health coach. And more importantly, I am super passionate about burnout prevention among teachers and educators. And really anybody in the field of education. So I'm so excited to be here with you today. I hope that you all have a chance to watch my presentation about self-care by subtraction. Um, I, like many, had my own burnout experience a couple of years ago, and it was so interesting because I was so used to being an overachiever, a person who just did all of these things that when I was taking time off to recover from my burnout, I was treating that recovery like another project. And so I was just adding on all of these extra things. And what I realized is true self care in a lot of situations is more about removing things than adding more to an already full plate. So I'm excited to talk about that with you guys today. Just curious if anyone has ever experienced burnout. If you have, let us know in the chat. I think it's very common, but I'd love to just, kind of see how that's showing up for everyone. So if you've felt it in the past, or if you're worried about feeling burnt out this school year, let us know. Okay, and while that's going on, I'd also like to ask another question. Sometimes when I say the word self-care, I get a variety of responses. Of course, this conference is the summer self-care conference, and so we all kind of are here and value taking care of ourselves, and you value taking care of yourself. But I'm wondering, was there ever a time when you heard self-care and felt a little cringy? Yeah. I get some eye rolls sometimes, and I don't know if it's the word or if it's because sometimes we just, here's what I think. I think that when we are in a good place, when we're on summer vacation, when we have time for self-care, like right now, we feel good about it. But I notice that when it gets to be a busy time of year, when we're starting to really feel that stress and grind of the school year, when we're really starting to feel completely stretched too thin, and someone asks us what we're doing for self-care, that's when we start to kind of have the eye rolls and the cringe factor. And I find that really interesting. And, it's almost like sometimes I give the example of when you're feeling really upset or frustrated with your spouse. And if they ever tell you to just take a deep breath and you kind of want to just like, punch them in the face because you're like, I don't need you to tell me that right now. Right. So I think that it's important to kind of keep this idea of self-care is like self-preservation, right? It is keeping the gas tank full. It is keeping our resilience meter at a place that allows us to deal with setbacks and adversity and challenges and difficult times. And so, what would be helpful for you to kind of remind your future self why this is so important? So, I just encourage you when we talk about self-care and all of its dimensions throughout the conference and throughout this short time that we're together today, how can the thought of self-care feel nourishing and supportive to you? Okay. So, another thing that I would love to just talk about is this idea of self-care as something to subtract. And what does that mean? So, self-care by subtraction, like I said, I came to this phrase a few years ago when I was just piling on all of these extra activities. Like, my day was full of acupuncture and walks in nature and yoga and therapy and getting my nails done and reading all the self-help books and decluttering my house and doing all of these things that in and of themselves they're great, they're good, they're wonderful. But for me, it just started to be way too much. And I've noticed too that sometimes When I ask people, you know, what self-care looks like for them, and they do kind of have that cringe factor response, it's because it feels like one more thing. So I'm just curious, has anybody ever felt like they didn't have time to do these extra things, or they started to do extra things and it felt more stressful? And you're not alone. And so when we think about it the other way as subtraction, what can you take off your plate? So I talk about these 3 R's. So recognizing, replacing, and releasing. So if we were to recognize the commitments that are causing us stress, if we could recognize the relationships that were causing stress, or if we could recognize the patterns in our own lives, the habits that we perpetuate that kind of add to our stress cycle, what would that look like? And I have a workbook that I developed and I shared with everyone who is participating in the conference. It kind of goes along with the other presentation. So I definitely encourage you to download the workbook because it kind of talks through each of these things. But, you know, when you think about the year ahead, uh, what are some things that you are currently worried about? What are some of the things that you are concerned will take up a lot of your time, will take up a lot of your energy? Perhaps it's a new curriculum. Perhaps it's a new administrator. Perhaps you're going to be in a new building. You know, what are the things that are causing you kind of stress when you think about, what those are going to look like? And with that, what is within your circle of control, right? What within that stress can you let go of? So, for example, I was working with someone recently who is very passionate about all things in their building and sits on multiple committees, is the advisor for several different clubs. And really, she loves it. But at the same time, it's kind of like a catch-22 because she loves it. She enjoys being the mentor for the students. This is in a high school. But it takes up so much time. And she was telling me that last school year, she was after school 4 days a week, every single week because of all of these commitments, the committees and the clubs that she was advising. And so even though there's a part of her that's excited about that, there's a part that feels a little bit stressed. And so we worked together to figure out, okay, well, do you have to do all of those? And at first the answer was yes, because I've made the commitment and I said I would. And I asked, well, how is that going to impact your relationship with your family again this year? Or how is that going to impact your energy level come November and December? And we realized that she didn't want to have another year where it gets to be winter break and she's dreading coming back to school because of all of those commitments and all of that extra time and energy involved. So she prioritized the two that she felt were the most important. And we came up with a plan to kind of pass along the responsibilities for the other two to someone else. And it worked out just fine. And just taking away that extra pressure, that small amount of pressure, but really was quite a bit, it was so relieving. And so that's just one example. If you can recognize something that might be contributing to either anxiety about what's going to happen in the future or even something right now, what is that? And how can we release some of that? How can we let some of that go? And then the other word that I mentioned is replace. So sometimes it's not necessarily letting something go completely or releasing it completely, but maybe it's that we can replace a habit that used to be helpful, that's no longer helpful, with something that is more supportive to our needs. So, for example, I can tell you that I am a recovering people pleaser. I, like most of you, I care deeply about people. I want to help. I want to be there. I want to say yes because I am multi-passionate, and so I do jump in and agree to do all the things. And I also don't like conflict and I don't want to let people down. And so, that is something that I've been working on. And so with the first R, recognize, I recognize that's who I am, and how can I replace that tendency to just say yes to all requests and put my own needs or my family's needs last. And so what I've been working on replacing the immediate yes with a that sounds great. Let me think about it for a day and get back to you. And that sounds so simple, yet that was so difficult to do those first couple times. And it still is, but it's reinforcing because people are just like, okay, no big deal. Sure. No one really cares. Um, and then that does give you time to think about, do you really have the bandwidth to do this thing? And if you say yes to this thing, what then are you saying no to? Someone that I once worked with, a mentor of mine, said to me, Amy, every single yes also equals a no. So when you're saying yes to something, you have to think about what will you say no to. And that's so true because there's only so many hours in the day. So that's just another example. And so I really would love for you to just, after you take a look at the presentation and download the workbook, just really spend some time reflecting on what are those habits within yourself that, perhaps, like I said, they may have served at some point. Another thing that I notice that has gotten in the way of a lot of our ability to just kind of remain free from like lots and lots of stress and burnout is this tendency to be a perfectionist. And perfectionism in and of itself is not a terrible thing. It's probably why you're such an amazing educator, right? But if it gets to the point where the perfection is taking up so much time or it's impacting your daily life or impacting your ability to attend to your own needs, to care for yourself, then that's when it's becoming detrimental. And so I've been working with a lot of clients lately as well on good enough. So I've been working with a lot of people on the good enough summer. What would be good enough? Yes, of course, we know you could do it, this beautiful way, and it would be amazing, and it would perhaps meet your high standards. But what would be good enough? And what would happen if you just allowed it to be good enough? And then we have to take that scary leap and that scary step and just let it be at good enough and see what happens. And a large portion of the time, good enough is going to be just fine. And you'll feel relieved that you were able to just kind of let it go and be good enough. So I've been talking a lot. I am curious if that's resonating. Let's see here. Let me take a look at the comments. Okay. Wow. Look at all these wonderful comments. You guys, I didn't even see this because I've been talking so much. Um, so, all right, let me go back and see. So we're worried about teaching during the day and doing some after school programs. Yes, those long, long days. Those are so hard. I definitely feel cringy about self-care. Okay. So I'm glad to see that I wasn't the only one who experienced that. I'm just reading through some of these comments. Feel the cringe when administration weaponizes self-care or blames teachers. That is such a good point. So when I often have the opportunity to go to various schools in the Denver area and provide wellness workshops. And I always start with this disclaimer, which is personal resilience is one piece of the puzzle. So, if you study organizational wellness, for example, we are told that you have to start with the culture, you have to start with the systems and the leadership, and personal behavior change is like at the bottom. And so that's one way to look at it, but also I find that it's empowering to it's really empowering to know that we can take small steps, we can make small shifts in our own lives that lead to transformative results. So those things that I was talking about, letting something go, setting a boundary, saying no. But at the same time, it's not your responsibility to, practice more self-care and then deal with these demands that are unavoidable, or these demands that are, unavoidably stressful, the things that just kind of are out of your control. So let's see here. I am curious. Okay. I'm just reading some more of these comments to see. Yeah. Okay. So when you think about the things that you're most stressed about for this upcoming year, um, what is something that you can change? How can you let something go? Is there anything you can let go? Is there a commitment that you can let go? Is there a belief about the thing? Is there a shift that you can make? Like, what is one thing that you can shift just 2% to lessen the pressure of that by 2%? Just letting a little bit of the steam out, you know? Yeah. Saying no to the after school program. Mhm. And when you think about what you need to do in order to set that boundary or say no, what is the barrier? What is getting in the way of feeling confident right now in this moment in doing so? Right. Yeah. So there are important decisions to make. If it's money that we're worried about, if I say no to this, am I going to be able to afford the lifestyle that I was used to? Um, but instead, I invite you to think about what's the best thing that can happen if you set the boundary. What is the best case scenario if you say no, for example, to the after school program, and you have that time back? What's the best case scenario? What can go well for you, right? Mental health. Your mental health would improve, your perhaps energy would improve. And I love what Brittany said about no longer ruminating on some of the concerns for the upcoming year. Yes, Margaret, you'll be happy again like I was before, right? So when we think about, I think that's the thing that a lot of people in general, but especially in education, we are very concerned about, the money piece, right? Because that person that I was talking about earlier, who was part of all those committees and leading um, those school clubs, like, yes, there was a stipend involved in some of that. So letting a couple of those go meant that she had to also let that extra income go, which was, not like huge, but it made a difference. Um, and that was part of the hang up with saying no. But like once she was finally able to do that, she didn't even care that she was going to be missing, that all in all small amount of money every month, because she had her time back and her mental health back. And so there's just so much that kind of goes into making those decisions. Yeah. So why do you think that? I want to kind of come back to the question about self-care being cringy. Um, why do you think that is? Why do you think that there are certain times when we hear the word or the phrase self-care and it makes us feel like, oh my God, don't even talk to me about that? What do you think it is? I'm wondering if it's that piece that, let's see, who shared earlier about administrators kind of weaponizing the word. Oh, and Maggie, I'm not sure if you're still here with us, Maggie, but you said something really important earlier, which is I feel like people tell teachers to use self-care, but then don't respect our time when we take the time away to practice self-care. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Taryn, there's a correlation with the stereotypical self-care stuff, getting nails done, et cetera, that is selfish or self-centered. Yeah. So when we think about self-care, I talk about it often as a spectrum too, because I think that we all have this idea. I don't know where it came from. I think it was the pandemic. I think that's when everybody started talking about self-care all the time. And it was like, um, what are you doing to take care of yourself? Are you getting your nails done? And, yes, going to the spa is amazing. Yes, getting your nails done can make me happy too. I mean, got my nails done the other day and it was glorious. But there are other things that are just as important, like staying hydrated throughout the day is self care. I was working with a school social worker. I still am working with her. She's one of my longtime clients whom I love dearly. But one of the first things that we worked on, one of her first goals was just drinking enough water throughout the day, which might sound silly, but she wasn't. And it was really impacting her energy and how she was feeling. And so, drinking enough water is self care, right? Sometimes it's just asking someone to come take over your classroom for 5 minutes so you can go to the bathroom. How many of us have just kind of felt like we're stuck with these children for hours and we like put our own needs, we totally stuck down our own needs, basic needs. Um, and that's not caring for ourselves. Sometimes I like to think about self-care as self-preservation. Um, Self-care can also be just taking a moment to check in with yourself and just notice how you're feeling and ask yourself, what do I need right now? Right. Um, and so it's like this spectrum where it's like on one end of the spectrum is like the basic needs, basic human needs. I think kind of in the middle is more of the typical what we hear about self-care stuff, getting your nails done or going to the spa. And then at the other end is, taking a vacation somewhere amazing. But that doesn't have to be it. And honestly, self-care needs to be something that we're doing multiple times throughout the day. Because if we think that self-care is waiting for summer vacation to take our, trip to Aruba, how is that really helping us the other 11 months out of the year? Um, yeah. So I'm wondering if anybody has advice about how taking care of yourself how can you take care of yourself in a way that doesn't feel selfish, that doesn't make you feel guilty? I would love you to share with each other. I've been talking a lot, but I'd love to hear. Um, is anyone willing to share what is one practice that you have been able to do that supports your well-being, that doesn't make you feel guilty, or how have you overcome those guilty feelings from it? Let me ask you another question. How are you practicing self-care right now in the summertime? Throughout your day this summer, how have you been caring for yourself? And is there any part of what you're doing now that you might be able to bring into the school year? Yeah, micro moments of self-care. Relaxing right now. Yeah. 2 to 3 minute meditation. Right. So it's all of these like teeny things, right? I mean, we can't necessarily go like take a nap in the middle of the workday, although that would be amazing. And I know some companies actually have nap rooms. Maybe someday they'll put those in schools for us adults. But until then, what are some of these small things that can just be done throughout the day that ground us? That help you feel a bit more connected to who you are as a person and not just like this robot who's there to do a thing. And it's interesting because I know you all experience the same thing, which is the to-do list that never ends. Like, even if we tell ourselves, okay, I will practice some self-care, I'll take care of myself, or I'll go for the walk, or I will, um, read that chapter of that book I've been meaning to get to as soon as I finish X, Y, and Z. But like once we finish X, Y, and Z, there's there are more things that have just kind of been piled on. So I think that when we can reframe just kind of that belief that we have to accomplish something in order to take care of ourselves, and we think about it in another way, which is we have all heard that oxygen mask analogy. Maybe someone's already spoken about that today or this weekend at the conference, but they tell you put your oxygen mask on before you help someone else, because if we can't breathe, we can't help someone else. And it's the same thing. If we aren't taking a moment to do what is ever nourishing for ourselves, whether that is spending 2 to 3 minutes practicing a simple meditation, or walking outside and feeling the sun on your face for a moment, or stretching, or getting up, or filling your water bottle when you need to, right? Or going to the bathroom, or whatever it is, like until we do the things that we need to do for our own well-being, we're not going to be able to put the right energy into the work that we're doing. And you do care deeply, and you are, passionate about your careers and the students that you work with, and you want to show up as your best self. And so you have to take care of yourself first. And so I love Brittany just said, giving yourself permission to rest. That's so important. Something that I talk about a lot is self-compassion. I'm not sure if anyone's heard that. It's also another phrase that sometimes I get some eye rolls about and some cringe factor, but it's like, basically, what would you say to a good friend in that exact situation, right? So if your friend came to you and said, oh my gosh, Maggie, I'm so stressed today. I have all of this grading to get done. I still have to plan my lessons for tomorrow. I haven't eaten all day, and I'm just exhausted, and I just don't know what to do. What would you say to that friend? Would we tell that friend, oh, well, you better keep pushing and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and yeah, too bad, maybe you can, rest later on tonight? No, we would not, right? We would tell our friend or our colleague, well, first of all, we'd show them some kindness and say, wow, that sounds really hard. You've got a lot going on right now. What do you need, right? Or how can I help you? Or what would happen if you just took a 5-minute break, right? We would encourage them to do the thing that they needed. And so how can we do that to ourselves? How can we check in with ourselves and really understand how we're feeling, and give ourselves the permission to do the thing that we need to do, whether that is saying no to something, subtracting something off of the to-do list, delegating, practicing good enough, or just letting something go, right? I love what Brittany just said. Someone told me to think of myself as a child, and sometimes you need to do the self-care when you don't want to, because it's what's best for you. Love that. I might have to use that in the future. I hope you don't mind if I borrow that, because it's so true, because we don't want to stop. Even if we're doing something that we enjoy. For example, when I was working on putting my presentation together for this conference, and I was, building the workbooks on Canva. I love Canva. Anyone else love Canva? It's so fun. And you find yourself like sitting at the desk for more than an hour. That's not good, right? We all know research says we need to get up and move around at least once an hour. So I have to like physically force myself to get up and move and walk to the other room, or go downstairs, or whatever it is. So forcing yourself to do those things is important. Whether we enjoy the task at hand or we don't. So much great wisdom shared by all of you. I really want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for joining. Thank you for sharing your tips and tricks with each other. And, if you have any questions, please reach out. And I really enjoy these conversations because they're really important. And I think the more we can talk about it, the more we can normalize the experience, the better we'll all be. So thank you all so much for being here. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer and have an amazing school year. And think about what you can subtract. Think about self-care as subtraction. Okay. Bye, everybody.